Cool. All right, we're gonna tackle through our last segment here. Everybody, circle back, round it up. We're going through the last little bit. And with this one, I'm going to kind of select which parts we go through. I could talk about this part for a long time, but I won't. I'm going to start out by sharing results of a survey. A while ago, I was really kind of confused about why I had so much traffic going to this API doc site, right? I was getting a lot more people going there. Well, not a lot, but it accounted for 59% of the visits to the site overall were going to this. And I thought, well, it must be a bunch of engineers who are trying to write documentation. So I embedded a survey at the top of this on every page here, and it said, hey, are you an engineer? Complete this short survey about kind of why you're coming here and about the whole doc writing experience. And 227 people glanced at this, and only about half of them completed it. But still, 107 responses is pretty good. Purely engineers, except for a few who were just like, nope. And questions I asked were, are you actually writing docs? Yeah, we're writing docs. Are you mostly just writing reference docs? About half said yeah. And are you writing it because tech writers don't understand the content because it's too complicated? No, we mainly don't have tech writers. And here's the big question. When I engage in documentation efforts, I prefer to treat documentation like software, using Git, text editors, Markdown, static site generators, building from the server, etc. 45% agree, 35% strongly agree, and like 10% are neutral. That means only a very small minority of people disagree. If you met 100 developers and you asked them, do you agree with this? There would only be about 6 or 7 people who don't agree. And I don't know why they would strongly disagree. But this is kind of like a wake-up call to the authoring tool industry. If you are creating documentation for developer products, most likely you are involving engineers in the process. Or maybe you're trying to empower them. I know at Amazon we have some teams that we author all the docs for. But other teams that are kind of like the third tier, as we've called it, we just sort of on board and say, you're free to publish documentation on our system using our tools, but you're going to have to write it yourself because your product's not that exciting for us. But anyway, or just different departments, right? We're not resourced for you, but you can use our tools. And they really like Docs as code. Docs as code simply means treating documentation, authoring, and publishing with the same workflows that you would treat developing software code. So for an engineer who develops software code, this comes as a no-brainer. Of course I want to use the tools that I'm familiar with and the workflow and the same kind of way of collaborating as I would. Why would I use something totally different like a did an XML solution or something? It goes against their way of thinking for the most part. All right, so in this section about publishing docs, I wanted to look at a few things. What makes developer documentation publishing unique? What are some patterns, the characteristics of Docs as code, Markdown and version control, REST APIs, and so forth? But these slides are a little more in depth than I want to talk about, or than I can go into. So let me jump into a few of these, a few sections here. I'll just talk generally about the Docs as code model. So there are common characteristics of the Docs as code model. One is that you typically write in a text editor of some kind. Atom editor is very popular. Visual Code Studio editor, I think. I'm not sure what it's actually called, but it could be Sublime Text. It could be a number of different editors. You could have like your favorite IDE that you're using in programming from JetBrains or something to write your documentation. But generally, you have a text editor that exposes all of the code. You're not authoring behind a WYSIWYG. You share and collaborate through version control, most commonly Git. And that is because, first of all, Git is just awesome for collaborating like that. But second of all, that's the workflow that they use. And a very common workflow, I'll draw something on the board. I haven't really gotten to use this whiteboard yet. So the very most common workflow that you might see is a pull request. Actually, it can go both ways. But it's kind of like this. Let's say this is your version control branch. And each of these represents a little snapshot in time of when you're saving your stuff. You're taking a snapshot and saying, save it at this point. That's version control, Git, Mercurial, other options, but mostly people use Git. That didn't work so well. Basically, a pull request works like this. Let's say that a developer wants to contribute to docs, and you own the doc tool chain. So it could be the reverse. They will copy your documentation at some point in time, make a bunch of edits. Okay, now I'm really striking out on this marker. They will make a bunch of edits, and their branch begins to, oh, there we go, diverge from the main branch, right? And they're saving it, saving it, saving it. At some point, you want to merge this back in to the main branch and keep going. This could be called a branching and merging. It could also be a pull request, this act where you want to submit a formal request to merge back in these changes into the main line. But this is how I actually tell developers to work with us when they want to do their own authoring. I say, go ahead and clone our repository and start working in a branch. And they create their branch. Sometimes I'll create the branch for them. They check out the branch, they make a bunch of edits, and I'll check out their branch and say, looks good, or I'll work on it with them. And when ready, we'll actually merge it back in. We just like to control that. And most developers, they don't really want to merge stuff back into your main line. Software is a lot more formal about that kind of thing. They have lots of developers working on a project, and merging it back in is a huge deal that has all kinds of quality control monitors and checks. But docs tend to be a lot less monitored like that. Anyway, how many of you guys have worked in any kind of branching and merging scenario with version control before? Like everybody. Wow, holy smokes, I'm just sitting up here drawing stuff and you're like, oh, this is so, okay, Mickey Mouse.
It's good to see it drawn out.
It gets a lot more complicated, and some people have their own workflows. Some people hate the idea that you're like merging on the side, so they rebase in this one nice line, but I like to keep it simple. There's a few other characteristics. While I'm drawing, I'll draw a few more. You usually have multiple branches. Let's say you have your master branch, which is like the main one, but then you might have like a beta branch and a prod branch, and you set up your pipelines or your workflows so that when you commit code, let's say you merge master into beta, and you push it up to the remote server, your remote server says, oh, I detect a change to beta. I'm going to initiate the building and publishing of the documentation. And same thing with prod. Let's say you merge your master into prod. Prod has these listeners in the repository that say, I detect a change. And now on that server, instead of building it locally on your machine, it builds it on the server directly and pushes it out. And this process, where you have listeners that are continually listening for changes to specific branches and then automatically deploy, is called what? Anybody know? It's called continuous deployment. Oh, continuous. Or I guess there's some other names for it. Integration, deployment, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, maybe CI is more common. Okay. Continuous integration, continuous deployment. This is kind of very much more common in the software development agile world, right? Where you have people who I mean, they have whole build systems built up around this concept where they're pushing stuff out constantly, and we want docs to do the same. That is the killer feature right there, the continuous integration, continuous deployment, because you no longer have to worry about like building and transferring files. If you've ever like built something and had to FTP or upload files into a server every time you wanted to publish, you know how tedious that can be. How many of you actually have, yes, in the back. Yes. Yeah, so I'm not necessarily saying you should jump into the software developer's code. I'm saying most docs as code workflows will mimic the same workflow. And so you might have code that's built with the same build management systems or infrastructure as developers, and you can push your code along the same lines. Now, if you have your documentation coupled in with the same development code, then you have a different scenario. Okay. And you would probably do the same thing as the pull request. You only, instead of you owning the main master branch, let's say you work with developers and you say, I'm going to create a branch from your source code. I'm going to make all the changes to the docs. And when I'm ready to roll it in, tell me how I do a pull request or tell me the process, and they'll merge it back in and make sure it didn't break anything. So this pull request workflow is really quite common. And it just depends what scenario you're in. Most of the scenarios I've been in, the docs aren't necessarily coupled with the code itself. What do I want to say about this? I really like this workflow, although it can be a little challenging in some ways. The challenges are often around more robust characteristics. I mean, it's all very fine to use Git and lightweight markup, like Markdown and so forth, but there's some real pain points, like generating a PDF, maybe for review, right? How do you review docs? Well, you need a PDF so that you can upload it and people can annotate it or something. How do you translate content? Because a localization platform is going to want HTML or XML. Or if they do say they accept Markdown, they only accept Markdown, not a mix of Markdown and HTML. That screws them up. Search is often missing from these systems. You have to like integrate a third party such as Algolia or SwiftType. It can be a lot. And then theming your own or building your own website is often a task that you may suddenly have to do. So you've got a lot more sort of on your plate. But the best approach that I think is to figure out what infrastructure your engineering team uses and to try to get some engineering resources to build your own workflows like this. Or, sorry, if you can do a third-party setup entirely, that's better. But assuming you're doing internal, try to get engineering resources to build similar workflows as what they use with software. All right. Questions or thoughts on this? How many of you already have like a docs as code type workflow? Just a few people? Okay, a few, 5 or 6. There are a few, we're not going to do any of these, but I kind of dive into this at depth in some different areas. There are 4 categories of tools in this space, and it can be quite confusing. You have the static site generators. This is what you would build your regular docs with that have the conceptual information. And there's a whole site on these. If you've ever been to staticgen.com, it shows you all the most popular static site generators. Jekyll, Next, Hugo, Gatsby, and it just keeps going. It's really quite fascinating how many there are. There's 350 or more. But when you get down here, like who uses Poltergeist or Yaz? It's like, apparently it's really easy to build these tools, and I bet a lot are clones that have tweaks because people wanted to do things differently. So if you just limit it to the top like 10, you only have a handful of choices. Jekyll is probably the easiest to get started with, but it's not really keeping the same momentum popularity. If you look at the rates of how they're being forked and cloned and the issues and stuff. Hugo's outpacing it. Hugo builds things really fast. You can have a doc site with 3,000 pages that builds under 5 seconds. The same doc site in Jekyll will take you 3 minutes. So every time you build it, you sit there and you wait for that. But just to give you a quick example about how this works, this doc site that the course is built around is based on Jekyll. And if I wanted to update something, I open up my text editor and I go to my project, and you see I have all my text files. Let me close these. I don't mean to open them all at once. I would navigate through the folders on the left, right? There's no clear GUI. So if I want to update, I don't know, this starting, well, let me update a workshop activities page. If I want to come update this page, I might come into my tool and quickly find it through a keyword search, or I could expand docs and go to this intro. And actually I have a short survey, so let me, actually, why don't I populate this in real time? If I come into workshop Raleigh, let's say I wanted to distribute this survey. I come in, I'm going to uncomment this, pop it in here. Right? It's all in Markdown. There's usually front matter at the top. You can custom define your front matter. Most tools have a similar setup. And I've rigged up some custom code about like how to read the weight and order things and which sidebar to use and so forth. I'm going to save it. And Atom has a nice feature where you've got an editor built into the bottom. It automatically opens up to the directory where you're on. It's the same thing as working in Terminal. And I've made a change. So the basic flow is like this. First I'm going to add all the changes that I've done. I'm going to check out to see what I've changed. I've made one update to this file. So this is now, it's like, it's in the staging area. It's ready to be committed. If you go through Git tutorials, you'll see there's these different stages in where things have been added and they're tracked. And then when they go to the next, they're in the staging area. Now I'm going to commit this with git commit, and then a short message, added survey. All right, now I'm ready to push this to the server. So I'm going to go all right, so now it's hooked up to a GitHub repository that is basically building Jekyll dynamically when it receives an update on this master branch. If you go into GitHub, there's a little section in each repository that lets you say, yes, this is a Jekyll project. Yes, build it, and build it based on this branch. And I was working in the master branch and just built it. So let me refresh this page a bit. You can see right there, it built it from the server, and there it is. Now if I wanted to build it locally, I would do bundle exec Jekyll serve, and it would give me a preview URL. You know, it's taking time. All this is happening on the server because GitHub offers the ability to build directly from the server, or at least with Jekyll. So I don't have to sit here and wait. I don't have to grab my built files. And it gives you this little preview URL that runs your site on a simulated web server locally. So I come in here and you can see the same, oops, workshop, there we go. The same kind of thing. So this workflow works out really well. When I came to Amazon, I was able to implement a Jekyll workflow, and it made things a lot more efficient, honestly. It replaced a really outdated web CMS that the team was using that everybody hated, and Git was really empowering. I mean, it's, apart from all the static site generator tool discussions, Git itself is incredibly useful for branching unreleased content and merging things. If I want to see what all the other people have been contributing, I can see that through these commit logs. I can see exactly what's changed. And I can track all that. It's all tracked every time somebody makes a commit. All right, so this is the wrong survey.
Implement the review process in that workflow.
How do I implement the review process? Hold on. This is, okay. How do I implement the review process? Well, I tend to, give me one sec. Let me put the right URL in here, and then let me republish that. I have a survey from, oh, I know why. I didn't replace both of them. All right, so it rebuilds every time you make a change. Let me just push this out real quick. Okay. The way we do our review, I wish we kind of had a better system, but basically I output a piece of documentation, one topic, small book, into a PDF and upload it into something called Work Docs, which is like a way to comment on files. I believe it's a standard product available in like the AWS suite of tools. Essentially kind of like Google Docs, but with commenting. People make comments, I can track, see who's done it. It's more formal of a review, and then I roll those back into the process. There's no like easy ability to comment inline in these tools. I mean, theoretically people could like add comments and track it through their own changes to commit logs, and then I could do diffs on different commit logs, but I don't like that. So yeah, it's somewhat, it tends to work. You know, I think the review process is more successful by following general best practices of limiting docs to smaller chunks, being more formal in asking who to review them, holding them accountable, following up.
Large reviews where
Yeah.
everybody just goes in.
Yeah.
And nobody really goes in there.
Yeah, if I send everybody a web page and say, hey, give me your comments on this, guys, nobody's going to respond. If I have one page that's a PDF and I say, hey, Jim and Sally and Sue, I need your comments on this. Can you give them back to me in a week? And then I see who's commented and follow up. It's like, that works. So, all right, let's see if this thing updated to the right survey. Yes, okay. We're reaching our end. I said 4:30 we'd draw a close. If you want to get into the other stuff later at some time, like the getting a job and so forth, it's all on my site. So there's a whole section. All these sections are expanded on at length. There's this whole section on getting a job. I actually broke down where all the API doc jobs tend to be. I've done some very amateur sort of looking into what Indeed shows as the best places and sort of looked at how they correspond with other job locations. You're in a good spot over here, I think. I don't know, maybe
There's only 2 jobs.
Well, there's only 2 jobs. They're not always advertised as such, but anyway, there's more information there, as well as how to find open source projects on GitHub, how to get involved in that. And if you have questions, I'm going to hang around here until everybody's gone, at the latest 5. And be happy to chat with you one-on-one. But before you go, I do want you to do this little survey, because otherwise it's really hard for me to know like how this went. So if you go to that page, sorry, I don't even know what I updated. Workshop activities. There's a survey at the top, or you can just type in bit.ly/Carolina Workshop. Most of them are multiple choice. Oh, we didn't do our Jeopardy one, man. Okay, well, why don't you do this first, and then we'll see. But
Hey, Tom.
yeah.
Can you go to reddit.com
/NSF
/r/technical writing?
/R, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the tech writing sub.
Yeah.
Okay. R, tech writing, technical
Yeah.
writing. Yeah. Okay, so the sticky post is a list of open source projects that need
Oh, yeah.
documentation. So you can look at that list and see if you want
Good.
to do something for your portfolio, or if you're looking for a job, start there.
Cool. Good call out. Yeah, look at that. They got a whole bunch of
there's
stuff.
a whole list of them.
Yeah, there's also something I saw yesterday with Google Season of the Docs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to apply for that. I don't know if the application is closed or not.
Yeah, that's where you can get like formal sponsorship to work on a project, like as a and get paid for it, right?
Yeah.
All right, so if you can take 5 minutes, 3 minutes to do this feedback, and then maybe we'll do a few Jeopardy questions and then call it quits. That would be great. Yeah. Sorry, it's on the workshop activities at the very top. It says, thanks for taking this workshop. Please take this short anonymous survey. It just launches a few questions. Should be fairly simple. You don't have to write anything in the comments. But based on the last feedback I got, I decided to mix in the activities. Some people said it was very long, and so I was like, yeah, it is very long. And that was even shorter than today, so I was like, we really have to do something. And when you're done with that, why don't we do 10 Jeopardy questions? It'll take us like 5 minutes. Is that all right, or do you think we should end? Okay. I just want to test these to see if they actually work as I thought, or if they don't work.
Do you have prizes?
Wish I did. I should have brought some. Didn't you tell me to bring swag? Somebody told me to bring swag. Or maybe that was a different. What? I don't have swag. The thing is, if I brought swag from my company, if I brought swag from my company, then it might seem like I'm like representing my company or something. I don't know.
I'd rather be writing pens for like $50.
I should have brought like GitHub stickers. They're always throwing those out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, take another minute there, and I really do look at that to try to improve things, and I appreciate it. So this last activity, we'll do 10 Jeopardy questions. You know how Jeopardy works. You receive an answer, and you have to guess what the question is. For example, if the answer was a device on your wall that shows the time, you would say, what is a clock, right? Okay, so number one, just go ahead and shout out the answer if you know it. An authorization method for API requests that uses a third-party identity server, such as Google, GitHub, or Facebook. Hey, look at that. All right. What is OAuth? A tool you can use to submit API requests directly from the command line. All right. A GUI tool that lets you save and organize API requests into collections. I made these too easy. A format that includes a mix of both objects and arrays, and often a mix of both. A space-sensitive format that is commonly used to write the OpenAPI specification. All right.
Make it in the form of a question.
The four most common methods or operations used with API requests.
What is get, post, put, delete?
Yep. All right. The 5 common sections every API reference topic usually has.
Description.
Yeah, okay.
Endpoints.
Yeah.
Parameters.
Yeah. Did I hear request and response in the schema? Okay, good. All right, a couple more. A description of all possible elements in a response, including their data types and other details.
What's a schema?
Here we go. Oh, we didn't really cover this one, so I'll ask that one. The original name of the OpenAPI spec. Okay, last one. I'll do random one. 20. A number shown in an API response when a request either succeeds or fails. Yep. Okay. What is a status code or error code? All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. This has been fun, and have a great evening.